Hey everyone, welcome back to Valley of Secrets. I'm your host, Nicci Ruth. Last week we began the story of Cindy James, a nurse from Richmond, British Columbia, whose mysterious death left investigators divided for decades. We ended with the first sign of terror that would consume her life. Today we're going back, tracing the 7 years leading up to her death in an effort to understand what really happened to her. But the deeper we look, the more answers blur into questions, and the more her story lingers in the minds of those who knew and loved her. If you haven't listened to last week's episode yet, I recommend starting there before continuing today with this chapter. It's January 27th, 1983. Inside her small Richmond home, Cindy James has just finished a late dinner. She's tired, but not enough to sleep. The phone's been quiet for a few nights, a rare reprieve. Her friend Agnes Woodcock stops by on her way home from work to check in on Cindy. She knocks on the door. No answer. She walks around to the side of the house, calling Cindy's name. Then she hears it, a faint noise, almost like a groan coming from the backyard. There, in the darkness, she finds Cindy, unconscious, lying face down on the frozen ground. Her hands are trembling and her breathing shallow. Around her neck is a black nylon stocking pulled tight. Agnes screams for help. Neighbors rush over. Someone calls 911 and paramedics arrive. When she comes to, Cindy whispers that she'd gone outside to her detached garage to grab something when someone came up from behind her, strong arms, a blow to the head, and then nothing but darkness. She says there were 2 men. One held her and the other tied the stocking. They threatened her, whispered her sister's name, Melanie, and told her she'd be next if Cindy said anything to police. When doctors examined Cindy later that night, the evidence didn't quite fit the story she told. The nylon stocking was real, tight enough to leave faint marks circling her neck, but there were no deep bruises or abrasions that would normally come from a violent struggle. Her scalp showed no swelling or impact injury, even though she said she'd been struck from behind. Her hands and her forearms were unmarked, no scratches, no broken nails, no defensive wounds of any kind. The soil in the backyard wasn't disturbed, the grass wasn't flattened, and police couldn't find any footprints other than Cindy's own. There were no signs of forced entry to the house or garage, and nothing had been stolen. The physical evidence suggested something had happened, but not necessarily the kind of 2-person ambush she described. Investigators and doctors alike couldn't explain how she had lost consciousness. The marks around her neck weren't severe enough to account for it. And yet, she was undeniably terrified, shaking, incoherent, and whispering that they'd threatened her sister's life if she told anyone. The scene left everyone unsettled. The violence seemed both real and impossible all at once. And just like that, the disbelief begins to creep in again. I tried to imagine what life felt like for her. Waking up in a hospital bed, the room buzzing with fluorescent light, and people taking notes about you, not for you. You're telling them that you were attacked. You can still feel the hands around your throat, but you can see the doubt in their faces before you even finish speaking. To you, everything that happened is very real. Police ask Cindy to see a psychiatrist. She refuses. Instead, she agrees to see a general practitioner who's experienced in counseling. In the 1980s, mental illness carried a heavy stigma. especially for women, and even more so for professionals like nurses. Seeking psychiatric help was often seen not as a step toward healing, but as a public admission of weakness or instability. For someone like Cindy, who prided herself on being competent, composed, and responsible for others' care, the thought of being labeled quote-unquote hysterical or crazy would have been devastating. At that time, mental health discussions were rarely compassionate. They were clinical, whispered about, and often used to discredit a person's credibility. For Cindy James, already dismissed by police and doubted by colleagues, the idea of seeing a psychiatrist didn't feel like help. It felt like surrendering the last piece of control she had over her own story. Within weeks, she moves out of that house and into a new one. A new address, a new start. She tells family she just wants to feel safe again. But unfortunately, the safety doesn't last. February 1983. It's only been a few days when the next letter arrives. It's a collage. Pictures, cut-out words, glued into sentences that make no real sense except for one message loud and clear. Run, rabbit, run. Soon, bang, bang, you're dead. She takes it to police. They log it, but there's not much else they can do. The calls start again. Whispers, heavy breathing, laughter, sometimes just silence. In April, Cindy moves to another home again. She changes her phone number, changes her locks, changes everything she can. But the fear follows her like a shadow she can't outrun. Later that year, the terror turns gruesome. Between October and November of 1983, Cindy finds 3 strangled cats in her garden, each bound with rope. She buries them herself, her hands shaking and crying so hard she can barely see. In her private diary, she writes about Roy, accusing him of destroying her garden, of watching her. But yet, to police, she says she doesn't think it's him. She just doesn't know anymore. By late 1983, Cindy hires private investigator Ozzy Caban, a security expert known for surveillance work. He installs floodlights, a panic alarm, and gives her a 2-way radio so she can reach him instantly if something happens. She starts carrying oil and pepper spray in her purse, even to work. Still, the calls come, the threats, the shadows outside her windows. Cindy repaints her car to disguise it. She changes her routines, even where she parks, and yet the fear, it's always one step ahead. January 30th, 1984. That night, Caban is listening on the 2-way radio when he hears something strange. A faint noise, movement, then nothing. He drives straight to Cindy's house. The door is unlocked, and the lights are still on. Inside, the living room looks like a crime scene. Cindy is lying on the floor. Her hand is pinned to the carpet, a paring knife driven clean through the flesh, securing a note beneath it. Letters cut from a magazine spell out a single chilling sentence. Now you must die. Caban instantly calls police. Puncture mark is found on Cindy's right arm, like an injection. Sounds familiar, right? But tests show no drugs in her system. There's blood smeared in circular motions on the kitchen floor, as if someone had started to clean it up and then stopped. When she regains consciousness, Cindy says she remembers seeing a man coming through the gate, then nothing. She agrees to take a polygraph, hoping it will prove her story. The result? Inconclusive. Every time she was found, tied, bruised, half-conscious, the same questions surfaced. Did someone do this to her? Or was Cindy somehow doing it to herself? And that's the part that gets under my skin most. Because what kind of life could make a person this terrified and this alone that even when she screams for help, no one knows which version of her pain to believe? After the paring knife attack in early 1984, Cindy's case begins to slip into something darker and harder for anyone to untangle. Detectives press her for details. Was there anyone she suspected? anyone she's keeping out of this? She hesitates, then, almost reluctantly, admits she's starting to believe her ex-husband Roy might somehow be involved. Roy, of course, denies everything. Calm, measured, almost pitying. He tells investigators he thinks the threats are coming from someone else entirely. Possibly a client from Cindy's work? Maybe even organized crime. He weaves a story about the mafia, about dangerous people she might have crossed paths with at Blenheim House, the treatment center where she worked with troubled children. The police aren't sure what to believe. Neither, it seems, does Cindy. Her father, Otto Hack, can't bear watching his daughter unravel. So in March 1984, he agrees to meet Roy himself, wired for sound by Vancouver police. They sit in a donut shop, 2 cups of coffee between them. Otto asks him, straight out, to leave Cindy alone. Roy is polite and even charming. He insists he's worried for her safety too. After the meeting, Roy writes Otto a 6-page letter outlining a theory so elaborate it sounds like fiction. That Cindy is the target of a criminal ring and that police aren't seeing the bigger picture. He ends the letter urging Otto to push authorities to investigate, quote-unquote, the mafia connection. When investigators read it, they don't know whether to laugh or shudder. Summer comes, but the nightmare doesn't ease. On June 18th, Cindy radios Ozzy Caban, the private investigator she's now paying to keep her alive. Her voice is trembling. He races to her home and finds her crouched in the garden shaking. Inside, he hears the whimpering first. The robe around Heidi's neck is wound so tight it's cutting her fur. Nearby, a note lies on the floor, "Happy birthday." Beside it, a stack of obscene photographs. Caban notices the rope looks identical to the one used to strangle the cat Cindy had found months earlier. He is sickened. A cigarette butt on the windowsill catches his eye. It's not Cindy's brand. Someone else had been there. Later, he tells reporters, quote, "She'd never have hurt that dog. Not the Cindy I knew," end quote. 2 weeks later, July 23, 1984, Cindy takes Heidi for an evening walk near Dunbar Park in Vancouver. It's around 8:30 p.m. Hours later, around midnight, a neighbor finds her in a dazed state on their doorstep, trying to get in. Her face is bruised, her blouse torn, and once again, that nylon stocking is tied tight around her throat. Heidi's leash trails behind her, empty. When paramedics examine her at UBC Hospital, they notice 2 puncture marks on her right arm. While she's being treated, a nurse at the front desk receives a strange phone call. A man with an accent asking detailed questions about the hospital's security. Later, when police play a recording of Roy Makepeace's voice, the nurse says it sounds eerily similar. Still, nothing can be proven that Roy had anything to do with it. By autumn, Cindy agrees to hypnosis with a therapist, hoping it might reveal something hidden, a clue, a face, anything. But what surfaces only deepens the mystery. She claims to remember witnessing a double murder, a man and a woman killed in a cabin years earlier, though she can't say where or when or who. The story fragments, dissolving as quickly as they appear. Police take the claims seriously at first, but as the months passed, they find no missing person reports that fit, no evidence of any murders near the Gulf Islands where she says it happened. The rumor mill starts turning. Maybe she's creating the danger she's running from. By the start of 1985, she couldn't carry it alone anymore. She began regular sessions with Dr. Alan Connolly, a psychiatrist who genuinely believed Cindy was being harassed, but also saw how much she was unraveling. He described her as bright, articulate, and determined, yet constantly on edge. He worried she might not make it through the year. In January, during another hypnosis session, she tells police she's seen Roy kill a couple on Thormanby Island back in 1981. Says he smeared blood across her face. But her sister Melanie, who'd been on that same trip, swears nothing like that ever happened. Investigators search records. Nothing. No murders, no missing persons. In June 1985, Cindy's admitted to Lionsgate Hospital after overdosing on her medication. She insists she hadn't meant to die, that she just wanted the noises in her head to stop. 2 weeks later, police convince her to take a part in a wiretap call with Roy. She confronts him, accuses him directly. He calls her insane, tells her she's living in, quote, an enormous revenge fantasy, end quote. The RCMP placed 24-hour surveillance on both of them for a week. Nothing unusual happens. No prowlers, no phone calls, nothing. And when the officers are pulled off duty, the incidents start again. Very interesting. In August, things spiral. A small fire in her living room burned newspapers on the floor. The next day, another blaze, same pattern. Then, at 4:45 a.m. on August 21st, firefighters race to Cindy's house once more. This time, it's in the basement bathroom. The window is slightly open, but there's no soot on the sill, no signs anyone climbed in or out. A detective later testifies he believes Cindy started the fire herself. Still, psychologist Dr. Anthony Marcus interviews her soon after and offers a different theory. He tells RCMP he thinks Cindy may be suffering from dissociative identity disorder, a mind splintered by trauma so deep that it erases its own memories. 10 days after moving yet into another house in Richmond, she disappears again. On December 11th, passersby spot a body on a roadside ditch near the University of British Columbia. It's Cindy, half conscious, shivering, her skin blue with cold. She's wearing men's work boots, one rubber glove, and that same black nylon stocking wrapped around her neck. She can't explain what happened. She does remember lunch earlier that day, a trip to the pharmacy, and then nothing. Doctors suspect a tranquilizer. They know bruises, scratches, small punctures in her arm. When she's finally discharged, Cindy books a flight to West Germany to visit her brother Roger for Christmas. For a few weeks, she can breathe. She tries to feel normal again. But back home in Vancouver, the question hangs like fog. Is Cindy James being hunted by someone or by her own mind? By early 1986, Cindy James was exhausted. The fear had become a routine. The phone calls, the dead animals, the fires. She changed her name from Hack to James, moved houses repeatedly, repainted her car, and still, the terror followed. In the spring of '86, she moved yet again, to her final place on Blondell Road in Richmond. One night that April, her friends Agnes and Tom Woodcock were staying over. Cindy shook them awake. She said she heard someone downstairs. Moments later, the basement filled with smoke, another fire, and phone lines dead. Tom ran into the street to call for help, saw a man standing under the streetlight. When Tom shouted, the figure bolted into the darkness. The fire was ruled suspicious. Cindy was inconsolable. Within days, she stopped eating and confessed to her psychiatrist that she no longer wanted to live. She was admitted first to St. Paul's Hospital, then transferred to Riverview, where she spent 10 weeks under psychiatric observation. According to the inquest summary, doctors described her as bright, articulate, but guarded, terrified that no one believed her, terrified that she was quote-unquote going crazy. She told her father she knew who was responsible, but wouldn't name them. And what has always haunted me about that is why she wouldn't say who. She told her father flat out that she knew who was behind it all, but she refused to name them. Not to him, not to police, not even in her private notes. Was it fear? Maybe she thought saying their name out loud would seal her fate, or put her family in danger. Was it doubt? That small gnawing question of, what if no one believes me? Or maybe it was something else entirely. a secret she couldn't risk revealing because it was tangled up in something bigger, something she didn't fully understand herself or want anyone to know. Whatever the reason, that silence became its own kind of evidence. It fed the skepticism of investigators, and it deepened the mystery for everyone who tried to help her. Because if Cindy really knew who was tormenting her and still couldn't say their name, that just tells you how terrified she really was. When she was discharged, she tried to rebuild her life. She took a position at Richmond General Hospital working in the pediatric outpatient unit. Colleagues remembered her as calm and gentle with the children, but always watching the windows, always on edge. The strange incidents, of course, didn't stop. Someone tampered with her porch lights, loosened bulbs, broke windows. A back door window was found cut in a perfect circle, as though by a glass cutter. In 1987, she came home to find a charcoal-colored nylon stocking on her porch. Inside, a package marked, "Blood flowing freely." Weeks later, a container of rotting meat was left on her doorstep. And then the fire started again, one after another. Investigators said there was no sign of forced entry for any of these. In 1988, Cindy was found half naked and hogtied in her garage. Again, a black stocking around her neck. There were bruises, cuts, and puncture marks on her arm. She couldn't remember how she'd gotten there. This time, police brought in a professional knot analyst who testified it was quote-unquote highly unlikely that Cindy could have tied those knots herself. Still, people were skeptical. By early 1989, Cindy had taken in a tenant, Richard Johnson, hoping another person in the house might make her feel safe. She was still trying to work, still trying to move forward, but the threats returned. A note was found at Richmond General Hospital, crafted from cut-out letters, saying, "Soon, Cindy." And on her windshield, written backward in the morning dew, as it could be read from inside the car, were two words, "Sleep well." In May 1989, there were reports of attempted break-ins in her home. Police brought in tracking dogs twice. The first time, they found nothing, and the second time, the dogs caught a scent that led over the backyard fence and disappeared into the night. Cindy told friends she felt that something was closing in, that she was tired but not ready to give up. She kept seeing her psychiatrist, kept trying to make sense of it all. Then came the evening of May 25, 1989, the night she vanished and ended up dead in an abandoned lot 2 weeks later. Those final years read like a slow-motion collapse, a woman fighting an invisible enemy. There's no denying that she was fighting an enemy, but we just don't know whether that enemy was a person or within her own mind. After everything she endured, the attacks, the hospitalization, the years of fear, it's easy to see why police wanted an ending. They called it suicide, but I can't stop wondering about the evidence. Because when you really look at it, what they found, what they missed, what they never tested, the story stops making sense. And maybe that's where the truth begins. Her body was discovered behind an abandoned home on Blundell Road, wrists and ankles bound, a black nylon stocking around her neck, that single puncture mark in the inside of her arm. But there was no syringe anywhere near her body found. Not in the weeds, not in the dirt, not in the blackberry bushes, not even in the McDonald's cup lying beside her. Toxicology revealed a lethal mix of morphine, Valium, and flurazepam, any one of them powerful enough to end a life. Her blood contained 10 times the legal dose of morphine, yet only trace amounts appeared in her stomach. That meant one thing: she hadn't swallowed it, she'd been injected. And if that was the case, she would have lost consciousness within minutes. So, who tied her hands and looped the nylon around her throat after that? Cindy James was a nurse. She knew exactly what those drugs would do and how quickly they could take effect. She knew that one dose of morphine would be enough. So, why take 3 different medications? even stranger, there were no pill bottles found, no residue, no containers anywhere near her. Nothing to suggest she prepared for this herself. And then there were the letters. Over 7 years, Cindy received dozens of obscene, cut-and-paste notes, threats made from words carved out of magazines, and envelopes that had been licked shut. Police dusted for some fingerprints, but most came back contaminated or inconclusive. DNA testing wasn't available in Canada at the time, so saliva from stamps and envelopes was never analyzed. But perhaps the most chilling detail was discovered during her autopsy. According to inquest records, several hairs were found on her body and clothing, shorter, darker, and coarser than Cindy's own. A few were tangled in the nylon stocking that bound her wrists and neck. They were tested under a microscope, the only tool available then, and declared inconclusive. No one ever learned who they belonged to because they didn't have a suspect to compare it to. According to both the inquest records and journalist Neil Hall, much of the physical evidence collected during the 7 years of stalking, the threatening letters, cigarette butts, hairs, fibers, and even photographs, was eventually destroyed by police after the case was closed. The RCMP followed standard evidence retention policies at the time, which meant that once the coroner's inquest was complete and no charges were pending, the material could legally be discarded. There was no expectation then that DNA analysis or modern forensics could ever make use of it. But what that also meant was that if answers ever did exist in those envelopes or in a single stray hair, they were lost forever. I can't help but think about that. How the truth might have been sitting in a police evidence locker all along, in something as small as a stamp or strand of hair. It's heartbreaking to think that the technology that might have proved Cindy right, or finally cleared her name, didn't come soon enough. Now all that's left are reports, memories, and questions that can't be answered anymore. Within days, the RCMP leaned toward a familiar conclusion: suicide or accident. A theory rooted in years of disbelief over Cindy's earlier reports. And soon the headlines echoed it. Cindy James faked her stalker and finally took her own life. But not everyone agreed. Her private investigator, Ozzy Caban, saw her body in the morgue and noticed something that didn't fit. The lividity, the post-mortem pooling of blood, was on her left side, even though she'd been found lying on her right. To Caban, that meant she hadn't died there. Someone had moved her. By that summer, the old brown and white house at 8111 Blundell Road, where she was found, was demolished. Whatever secrets it held were buried in the rubble. For 7 years, Cindy begged to be believed. She filed reports, showed evidence, and even hired private investigators. And every time something happened, someone found a reason to question her instead. Whether it was the police, her ex-husband, or the doctors who dismissed her trauma as delusion, Cindy's story became a study of how quickly we doubt women in fear. She did everything right: documented, reported, moved, changed her phone number, changed her name, and still she was dismissed. If she was suffering from mental illness, she needed compassion, not suspicion. And if she was telling the truth, if someone really was out there, then disbelief might have been the weapon that killed her. Cindy's story isn't just about one woman's death. It's about how a system can turn its back when truth becomes inconvenient. She didn't just die from an unknown event. She died from being unheard, unbelieved, unprotected. And that, to me, is the real tragedy of Cindy James. Cindy's parents, her ex-husband, and friend Agnes have all long since passed away, but her sister Melanie is still searching for answers. If you have any information about the death of Cindy James, please contact the Richmond RCMP or Crime Stoppers at 1-800-222-TIPS. Even one small piece of information could help bring peace to her remaining family, and maybe finally to her story. Thank you for listening to Valley of Secrets. If this story moved you, please share it. Follow along on Instagram or Facebook at Valley of Secrets Podcast. Every share helps keep these voices and their memories alive. If you want to contribute a small monthly donation, you can click the link under the source information to support this podcast. Any amount is greatly appreciated. Until next time, stay aware, stay safe, stay curious.